Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily A. Warren, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Hello, welcome back to the Content with Character podcast. I started pulling the ideas for this month and today's episode together all the way back at the beginning of July. And I have not sat down to record them until now, which is the beginning of August. So July, let me tell you, July was a month. It threw me some curveballs, both professionally and personally. Now, usually I really look forward to July. It's like a slower time. I get to hang out a lot, enjoy the sunshine, relax on the weekends. It's like just a different pace and usually a smidge more easy. Even if work is busy, life feels lighter because it's summer, right? Yay! But this year actually was a really heavy one in our little family over here. We had a family member moving, and it was like all hands on deck in various ways for my husband and his sisters, and then me just trying to like pitch in where I could. Like, does anyone need my help in the smallest of small ways? And meanwhile, I had a lot on my plate at work, and I was really overwhelmed. In fact, I might have been past overwhelmed into the point of full-on crisis. And nothing was just like running smoothly. There were like delayed launches and misunderstandings and back to the drawing boards, and it was all very odd and demoralizing and stressful. And perhaps the heaviest aspect was we lost our sweetest, best, only dog, Clyde, who you've heard about many times on this podcast. I can't even talk about it still without crying, but he was one of my very best friends and my beyond loyal sidekick and just like the most wonderful little creature that you ever could meet. And I really miss him. I miss his personality and his snuggly little body and the sweaters of dog hair he left in his wake everywhere that he went, literally every day. So it was all a lot sooner than I could have imagined, and I was not emotionally prepared despite thinking that I was. And as you can probably hear in my voice, I'm not even really ready to verbalize a lot of it without crying all over again. So I'm extremely grateful for the time that I got to spend with my dog, and it's never long enough. You know what I mean? It's never enough years. And if you're a pet owner, animal or dog lover, you most likely get it. Loving them so big and saying goodbye so permanently is maybe the hardest thing we have to do. And I'm also really grateful for the people who do understand and the people who really care and shared such kind, positive thoughts, people who took time to like send the most beautiful gifts. I'm going to get teary again, but I have this huge picture of his smiling face on my office wall right next to me right now, thanks to a friend. A candle with a paw print on my desk, this most beautiful book full of pictures of him. The local Humane Society has more peanut butter in his name than a dog could ever want, thanks to another friend. So the list of people goes on and on, the people who reached out and offered support. It is very long, and I'm so grateful for each and every single person. It has meant truly the world. This has been very hard. So I share that story, and I give you the lay of the land of my July, not to bring you down into the dumps at the beginning of the episode, not to delay the content of the episode. I know you just came for the numbers, and I know that some people say that my intro stories go on too long. I've gotten comments on YouTube, I've gotten comments from other podcasters, and here's the thing. I will always try not to overdo stories at the beginning. And I'm not going to stop sharing my stories and what is happening in my personal world, because this is a conversation, okay? It is you and me. I strive to see you, hear you, understand you, and my hope is that it's kind of like a vice versa thing, because it is about sharing the ins and outs and ups and downs of business ownership, which I hate to break it to us all, but business ownership is also just life. It is like all part of life. It is relationships and self-development, love, and it's just this big old miry container of life. So there's not really for me, separating myself into like neat, tidy little compartments. So of course, I want to share those 5 quippy tips and 10 top frameworks that are hot, hot, hot. And I also want to share me and my life and learn about you and your life and create real, genuine connection between us. And so if you don't like it, you can always just skip ahead to when you think I might start dishing out the goods. And you can also just not listen. But I don't think that's the kind of person you are. And my hope is that you will continue to be here for it, each and every second of it, because I do have some exciting stuff in the works for you. All right, so bummer of a summer, bummer of a July behind me. Here's what we're doing in August. I, first of all, am reclaiming summer. I am reclaiming summer for the last remaining month of it. I've been working really hard. Amidst all of that other stuff I just talked about, I've been working really hard on some changes in my own business. And my goal is to make August the month that I wrap all that up and finally have it ready to get out there. And as a way of holding myself accountable in that, there's some news I've been just dying to share with you, and I cannot hold the secret in any longer, but also I need you to hold me accountable to getting this done before the end of August. It involves you, okay? And I can't believe I'm about to tell you this. I wasn't going to tell you this, but I am renaming the Content with Character podcast officially in September. It is getting a fresh set of dancing shoes, soup to nuts, and I have lots of reasons why. I'll tell you about that in a separate episode, because I think there are times in our business that we ask ourselves, do I need a rebrand? Does my podcast need a rebrand? And sometimes the answer is no, I'm just overthinking or trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And sometimes the answer is yes. And mine was a very resounding yes. So by September, you will be tuning into the same podcast with a different name, an updated, more grounded mission, I think, and still yours truly, Emily Aborn, with the same stories at the top of the episode. The new look and feel and name is really going to help me take the show where I want to go. I'm going to take you with me, so more on that soon. And thank you, of course, so much for being here and experiencing what we've created already. So exciting stuff, more excitement to come. But today, let's stay on the topic of podcasting. And I really want to give you some insights on the numbers of podcast hosting, guesting, as it relates to money spent, money earned, hours spent, energy spent, and things that we get in return. So obviously you can see this is a bit of a longer episode. This month, August, I'm focusing on collaboration. I really want to show the power and the ripple effect of collaboration, which podcasting is a form of, and where it really can take you and your business. So today we're going to get into, to kick us off, the real numbers behind podcast hosting and guesting. Lots of people ask me about either being a guest on other podcasts or starting a podcast of their own. And I thought this was a good way to kick off our month of collaborations and hash some of this out. So, because I think that by knowing these numbers, you can actually be an even better guest or host. Just like business is both profit and soul, science and, just real life heart stuff, podcasting is also a blend of art and science. It is, and I think that knowing the truth about the numbers can help you become even better at the creativity and craft part of it. So I was thinking, let's break this down: time, energy, money, from a host and guest standpoint. And I have a lot of folks that weighed in on this. So as we go through, I'll also give you little bonuses if anything comes up around downloads or any other numbers that feel relevant as we go. But let's start with time. I'm helping a woman right now with a podcast guesting bundle, and she asked me how much time it takes to get good at being a guest and being a more confident guest. And my answer to her was, well, it depends. It depends on where you're starting from. It depends on what tools and resources you have at your disposal. It depends your natural skills and abilities. And it depends on whether or not you're willing to work on your weaknesses and grow your strengths as a host or guest. I've been officially podcasting as a host of my own show since 2018. Now, before that, I was a co-host on a podcast. I guested on radio shows and like a few other local podcasts. And prior to that, as a kid, I did like lots of acting and drama and singing and speaking even in my early 20s and workshops and things like that. So I've had a desire to do this kind of thing since I was like a little kid. I mean, I was like the little kid walking around with a tape recorder, recording myself doing interview shows and creating cooking shows. And in my senior project in high school, I did a project that involved like audio clips from interviews all woven together. So that sort of journalistic style, human to human connection, telling stories through the microphone, this approach has always been deeply of interest to me. Now, that said, when I first started as an official podcast host, I was not very good. I asked questions quite robotically. I said, I love that to things that I didn't actually love because I didn't know what to say. Like, this is an affliction I still have to this day that I am working on, but I just had not found my voice. And there were a lot of times that I struggled to connect points and takeaways. So just be like kind of an unvaluable episode. It was not pretty. Okay. It was not pretty. And I want to say that it took about 3, possibly even 4 years to become a host I felt good about. And then 3 to 4 years of hosting and focusing on guesting and lots of speaking to get to where I am now, which is still not great, but it's fine. It's just not where maybe I would like to be, right? So I am still a work in progress. We are all still works in progress, but I say all that to say, like, it might not take you that long. You might be a natural. You might hit the ground running. I'm only sharing my journey to encourage you that, like, no matter what, also getting more confident on it, it's all about your timeline and your path. What I have found that has helped me get better, and which I never did at the beginning, is that I go back and listen to my interviews. I listen to interviews I'm a guest on, and also when I did interviews as a host, I would listen to those too. And I found that listening to myself, as well as podcasters I think are doing a really amazing job, not comparing myself to them, mind you, but that has really helped me to improve. And then also one of my goals is to gain some improv skills. I think that would be really good for somebody like me. I'm a preparer, so I prepare the best that I can, and that has helped me improve. But now I'm ready. I think to get to the next level, I would need to work on like some improv, because I know that if I'm going off the cuff entirely without any preparation, it doesn't always translate as well. So these are all the things you learn about yourself that take time, and how much time only you can say by going through it. So that was kind of just like a long-winded, of course, way to say it depends how much time it takes to get confident and good at it, but you will not know until you get started and take that first step. And confidence has always, for me, shown up after I do the thing. It's not like something I feel going into the thing. It's something that finds itself along the way as you build those skills. Now, I also want to touch on the time commitment of actually being a guest or a host. How long does it take to have guests? How long does it take to do solo episodes? How long does it take to organize all those behind the scene pieces? So I asked 4 people to weigh in on these various topics today throughout the episode. My good friend Lindsay Dreyer, TC Burr, Barb Davids, and Christy Ouellette. And each of them is in a different industry. They have all been doing their shows for varying amount of times. They have different formats. Some have help, some do it on their own. So I thought it was a nice mix. And as I go through, I'll mention their shows, all their contact links, and their shows will be in the show notes. So make sure to check them out. So let's start with TC. TC Burr, host of the Right Mindset podcast. He says that he does not keep hard stats. I mean, I don't either, TC, but sometimes I do. Mine is, it depends. But he says that the actual recording process is easier and takes him less time per episode when he has guests. This surprised me a lot. He does put in time up front, but TC is really good, and I credit him so much for this. He has a knack for just like sitting down with a guest, having a natural conversation, and letting it flow. He lets it go the way that it's going to go. He also finds that when he has a guest, he doesn't need a lot of post-production editing. And again, I credit him because that means he's finding really good guests. Conversely, though, this is so interesting. TC says that solo episodes require more time. He has to outline each episode, sometimes do multiple takes if he didn't like how he said something. And he also spends time incorporating visuals like slides and things like that. Now, the trade-off is that the logistics of guest interviews, they can be really difficult, and you'll hear that theme repeating. It is time consuming in ways outside the interview. People's kids get sick, tech gets wonky, they need to reschedule. There can be a lot of back and forth. Whereas when you do a solo, it's just literally sit down and record. And finally, TC shares that sometimes you hit a bump in the road and someone is not a good guest, or they clam up, or they give you a boring one-word answer that you really can't run with, or it's long-winded and the answer goes on, and then he does have to do a lot of post-production editing. So he didn't give me concrete numbers, but I wanted to share that because you really can get a taste of like what is involved hosting with and without guests. Now, Christy Ouellette of the Talk Travel to Me podcast, she gave me some awesome tangible numbers around this. She has a really unique format for some of her episodes where she'll have like other travel agents join her and discuss the topic of the day. And sometimes she will have guests. She had me on to discuss my cruising anxiety, and I will share the link to that episode because she did help to quell some of my cruise concerns. But Christy shared with me that it takes her at least double the time per episode when she has guests versus just doing a solo. She did a solo episode a few weeks ago, and it took her 1 hour. Now, unlike me and TC, Christy gets an idea, grabs a microphone, and she can just talk for 40 minutes. It is incredible. And then she's done. Like literally that's it. She's done. She has an editor, but it doesn't need a lot of editing because she's really, really good at being off the cuff. So it was all set in an hour tops. Now, when she's bringing on other agents or guests, she says it can be a game of back and forth because it's like scheduling and making sure people are prepared and has read the outline and the notes, and then they show up and they haven't read the notes and da-da-da-da. Now, Christy, I would say, like I said, she is very good at solo casting. She is eloquent. She can go off the cuff impeccably. For me as a solo caster, it does not only take me 40 minutes. I spend so much time outlining my episodes, but once I'm done my prep, I have so much that I can use for repurposing. It might literally take me 1 to 2 hours an episode, but actually recording only takes me the amount that the episode is in length, and then probably 20 minutes to get everything else together. So a lot of my time is spent preparing, honestly, thinking, putting together the outline, adding notes, right? Getting information from fellow podcasters like this. So like TC, when I'm doing it myself, I have the advantage where I can just stop the microphone, say something again. I'm not naturally as eloquent as Christy. So as a solo caster, I appreciate the ability to kind of be able to have a solid outline, but also know that I can pause and re-say something. It really depends on the kind of speaker that you are. But I do echo her notion that it takes double with a guest. In fact, I think for me, when I was having guests on my show regularly, my former podcast, it was triple between all the back and forth. And if I was for example, interviewing an author, I would literally read their entire book. I would go on social media and find out everything I could about people. I invested a lot of time in my guest episodes, which is why eventually I did sunset that particular podcast and I started this one with just me instead, because now if I have guests, they are extremely few and far between. They are hand selected, and we've prepped so much beforehand that I know that editing is going to be a breeze. I know scheduling is going to be a breeze because I trust them with my life in most cases. They're that kind of people. Okay. And then lastly, my friend Barb of the Small Business Sweet Spot podcast. Barb says that conceptualizing and writing her solos takes her about 30 to 90 minutes. Her solos are very short. They're usually like under 20 minutes. So you can see the difference there. Editing her solo episode, she says, takes another 15. And then the graphics and supporting material like blogs and such, that's an hour. So I'll do the math for you. We're at 2.75 hours all in, 2 3/4. Barb is like me in that she will often add blogs to her episode, and she does repurpose the content into social media content and other things. So that piece of it can be more time consuming, but it's a good approach. It's very strategic. It's very cohesive. And in my opinion, it's very worth the time because you're able to use it for so many other things. And I just see so much value in that. Now, when Barb has guests, she says for prepping, she doesn't actually do any writing of anything. She'll prep, research, and like jot down some questions, but that prep time takes her about 30 minutes. 30 to 45 minutes. So it's like it could potentially be cut in half from what she's doing with a solo episode. Editing, still about 15 minutes, plus whatever length they are. So that could go upwards of an hour, depending. And then graphics, once again, we're at another 60 minutes. So once again, I'll do the math for you. It's 2 3/4 of an hour. So whether she has a guest or she does it on her own, it's 2 3/4 of an hour because of the differences in, what is being prepped and such. So I also thought it would be advantageous to include time for pitching and prepping as a guest because this is what people ask me about so often. And I want you to know it actually is quite a large time commitment, super valuable one, which I'll get into when we talk about money. Hours to pitch, time pitching. I spend about, and this is no joke, I spend about 2 hours a week maximum, pitching and prepping and doing any guest prep work. No, this is strictly pitching work. Sorry. My goal this year is to do 35 guest interviews, and I'm not like aggressively working at this at the moment because I've hit, I think, around 25, and I'm being very judicious with the things I say yes to. I use Podmatch, which makes it a lot faster. I will include a link to that in the show notes. I love Podmatch. I've said their name many, many times. I'm also part of some Facebook groups. I find those more time consuming, and I've been less good at using those as a resource, even though they're free, since getting on Podmatch. But I will spend about 60 minutes, listening to podcasts I would like to be a guest on. And then I put an hour into putting together specific and intentional and individualized podcast pitches. So that might, let's say, 2 hours would be like 2 to 3 pitches. Okay. So, and I would only really do 2 to 3 a week. Prepping as a guest, I spend anywhere from 20 to 60 minutes. So what I might do is create a few talking points for myself, make sure that I have a good understanding of the host's format and everything like that. If I need to listen to an episode, I might look at some of their profiles or their website. I refer back to my original pitch notes, and then just come up with some bullet points for myself. It really helps because some hosts don't have a good tether point or like a good anchor for their questions. And this helps me, even if they're a little lost at sea, okay? It helps me to be able to really, really deliver value and deliver concise information to the listeners. Then there's like the sitting down with them, which could take another hour. So that's about 2 hours, I would say, per interview. Some hosts do require like a pre-qualification call. That could be anything from 15 minutes to an hour. And sometimes those go someplace and sometimes those go nowhere. I did one recently with somebody. It was an hour. And then I decided I actually didn't want to be a guest on the show. So it was just not a great fit, and we didn't click. And that was an hour of time, kind of not wasted, but not resulting in an interview. Okay. And then follow up. I do follow up with a thank you in some form or fashion. It might be a review, a written thank you card. I, of course, share the episode. That takes another 20 minutes. So I would say like literally all in, it's like 2 to 3 hours a week. There are other factors of being a guest, and that is like getting ready in the first place. You have all that behind the scenes stuff. Like, what do you talk about? How do you figure out your pitches? How do you find these people? All that stuff. That's what I do with podcast guest bundles that I was talking about at the top of this episode. I save people a lot of time. But it doesn't save you all the time. I would say it's still about 2 hours a week, depending on how aggressively you're doing it, depending on the season that you're in. All right, let's shift gears from time and talk about energy. Now, this is a fun one and obviously slightly harder to measure, but not impossible. So first, I think that you really learn about yourself is whether or not you are introverted or extroverted or ambiverted. Do you pick up on other people's energy if it's draining? Does it drain you? Or are you able to keep your vibe, so to speak, high, even if you're sitting there interviewing Oscar the Grouch? I find that podcasting both gives me energy and in certain cases can take energy. Now, the taking of energy is, let's say, if I do sit down with a host who starts asking me very irrelevant things, like things that we didn't discuss or, in my opinion, are not actually going to translate into very important or interesting for their listeners, that's actually really draining for me because while I'm while I'm having the conversation with them, I'm thinking about these poor listeners and how frustrating this conversation can be, while all the while trying to stay energetic and deliver value. When I had guests on my own show, I was constantly listening to what they were saying through my listener's lens, and so it felt a little bit taxing. Of course, I cannot control what people think and feel, but I always am this person that wants to advocate for a great conversation for listeners. And so in some cases, that can be really, really exhausting. That can be really, really tiring. It can also be really draining for people who are not really people persons. And if you're having guests or being a guest, you might just get tired at the end. And that's okay. It's not like a bad draining. It's a good tired, but you might be tired. So you have to think about that. Other people find that the tech is very draining, the editing, the behind the scenes, the scheduling, like that kind of thing. So you'll learn yourself, know thyself. And some people find it really tiring to be consistent, okay? I thrive on being consistent. That gives me energy. I find it very draining when I start losing my consistency and I have to kind of like figure out where I am and pick up all the pieces and I'm scattered and stuff like that. I also find that when you are going through major life stuff, it can be really hard to bring the energy that you want to the podcasts or podcast guests and guesting. And for me, it's even certain times of day I'm cautious of. For some of us women, it can be certain times of the month. If you are a people person, I know a woman in my New England podcasters group shared recently that having guests helps her to get energy when she's having a bad day or when she's feeling like low energy. She said there is nothing better. So I would say start practicing knowing thyself and learning when you best show up energetically and when you are and aren't at your best, and then really start getting into sync with how you best work to increase your energy as a guest or as a host. For example, I'm doing this right now at 8:45 in the morning on a Saturday because I'm feeling really energetic and good. And I kind of always want that to come through in my episodes. All right. Lastly, let's do money. We did energy, we did time. Let's talk cold, hard cash. And then we're going to get into some potential outcomes that do also involve numbers. I'm going to give you as many exact numbers as I can. So if you're not like a numbers person, just tune me out for a sec. But in starting my podcast, I invested in a $80 microphone. I love this microphone. It's a Samsung Q2U, and it's just like my favorite thing. I dropped my $80 microphone about a year after purchasing it, and I had to buy another $80 microphone. So I've gone through 2 microphones. Hopefully, knock on wood, this will be the last for a while. I use Buzzsprout as my hosting platform. Highly recommend. Link in the show notes, obviously. And in the case in point of this episode, I can be long-winded. So I need to spend, it costs me $18 a month on there for the amount of hours that I upload. I am an affiliate for it. Sometimes I get a little kickback, but let's say I don't get that. It's $216 a year. I'm on Podmatch, which is a guesting hosting matchmaker platform, and it's a whole robust community. It is for me beyond well worth being a part of it. That is $29 a month. Again, I'm an affiliate. Sometimes I get like $5 here, $5 there, but that's $348 a year. Music for intro and outro is $60-ish. And if you're like me and you switch it, then it's another $60. I also did my cover art myself for the new name, but the first time I ended up spending $250 on cover art. And I also pay to be a part of New England Podcasters Group, which is somewhere around $150 a year. I don't want to give an exact number because I don't think the price is going to stay what I paid for it as a founding member. But that's about $150 a year. And then I might attend a podcasting festival in Florida. So let's just say it's about $800 a year normally, without this addition. And then there are little things here and there you might invest in along the way. For me, that is beyond worth it, which I will get to in just a moment. But if you have an editor, let's say I do all my own editing, but if you have an editor, the cost can vary greatly. I don't know the current prices of editing. I've seen literally anything from $50 an hour to $2,200 a month if it's an agency doing it all for you. So let's talk about the ROI on that, how much money you can make from podcasting. The short answer is I don't know exactly how much you can make, but I do track this stuff. I'm sure there are things that I miss, but for the most part, I ask people how they found me, and sometimes they will just tell me without me asking. But this year to date, with people I have asked how they found me, I have made just shy of $3,000 from podcast guesting. I do not sell things when I am a guest on people's shows. I do not have a pitch per se. I simply connect with listeners, invite them into my world, or they reach out to me and contact me because they were looking for a copywriter. And I just want to be sure to clarify that $3,000, some of that was actually from guest interviews I did like 3 years ago. So this is not an instant gratification kind of thing. It is a long game, for some longer than others. I have not done a great job of tracking money in through my own show, but I also don't really think that there is any. I'm pretty careful not to sell you too much, and I hope that comes through. So there is that. My friend Lindsay Dreyer, host of the Happy Agent Co. podcast, she shared with me that when she is a guest, she gets about 10 to 15 Instagram followers, which I think is very significant. And she also gets 5 to 10 lead magnet subscribers. And I think that is significant too. Now, Lindsay offers a coaching package, and getting those extra 10 people on her list is very valuable to her if she can convert them into like a paying client. So Lindsay has also seen her downloads nearly double since starting to guest. And I do have a hunch that will translate into income for her. I have not found that my guest interviews have had such drastic results with each and every interview, but that is not something I've perfectly tracked, and never say never. Okay. Lastly, on the ROI of guesting and hosting, podcasting in general, it is actually invaluable, meaning that these numbers are all to say there is no number, I think, that could properly sum up the impact. I have found it is a way to connect with people all across the world that really works for me and my personality. I don't love like large group networking things, and this is just such a nice way for me to network with people one-on-one. I've also found my voice and gained a lot of confidence and gotten clear on my message. I've repurposed things that I talk about into workshops and so much more. I've obviously connected with clients, like I mentioned, especially as a guest. And I've talked to people who would have never found me otherwise. I've made new friends. Actually, in fact, that is how Lindsay Dreyer and I met. She lives literally 10 minutes down the road from me, but we met through podcasting. I've forged collaborations that are like ripple after ripple. And one particular example is, again, Barb Davids, who I mentioned earlier, of the Small Business Sweet Spot. She and I have done events together. We've co-written blogs, and now we're doing a live in August, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. You are invited. So I want to give you all the details on that. But I've really, through podcasting and podcast guesting, I found a place to express and share and meet new people and connect and hear stories and have conversations with you and understand what you're going through and experience all sorts of different ways of doing things. I've gained ideas. I've generated more ideas from the ideas that I've gained. The list goes on. Now, there is also a dark side. I want to be totally real with you. It is a lot of time invested. It is a lot of energy invested. And sometimes you get ghosted. Sometimes you waste time. Sometimes people are no-shows. Sometimes you get burned. It can be really scary, like even when you've been doing it forever, to put yourself out there. Every time I go sit down to hit record, I feel nervous, and I think that's good. I feel like excited about what I want to share with you, but also like nervous. Like, does anybody even care? Now, my entire world has not fallen apart yet since with the releasing of one episode, but you never know. It still could. I get naysayers, people with opinions, and well, it's just like anything else in life or business. You really have to go into it committing to having your own back unabashedly and being 150,000% you no matter what, and commit to yourself first and foremost, and also commit to the people that you are sharing with and want to impact. As a podcast host, guest, and listener, I have learned so much, and I feel definitely less alone in running my business. Like, I pretty much don't ever feel alone in running my business. So I know that this podcast episode was about the real numbers of podcasting, but at the end of the day, can you really put a number on it? Can you really? I don't think so. All right. So on that note, I'm going to stop there. That was a lot. I know this was long. Good job for hanging in there. And if you like this, if you are eager to, let's say, be a better podcasting guest specifically, because there is so much opportunity there. I know a lot of people are focusing on that. I'm collaborating with Barb Davids and our very special guest, Andy Lyons of the New England Podcasters Group, to do a live event on Thursday, August 28th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is 2025 as I say this. It is called How to Be Their Favorite Podcast Guest, and we're going to be giving you our very best insider tips on showing up as a guest who delivers value and gets asked back time and time and time again, connects with your dreamiest clients so that you can grow your business and your show more and more and more. As I always say, a collaboration is 1 + 1 equals way more than 1. And this one is no exception. Our intention is to make a real ripple effect as we help you spread your message further and help more people. So if you are interested in more podcast guesting as a form of collaboration, make sure to grab yourself a free, absolutely free seat. We're going to be dishing it all out, and it's no cost to you. The link to that and everything else that I mentioned today, I know it's a lot, is all in the show notes. And you do know where to find me. If you have more questions or you want to open up more of a conversation, I will take this anywhere you want. Okay, and I will leave you here on that note. Next week, your podcast guesting prep talk, step 1 through 5 to being the best guest ever. I will chat with you then. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.